So I was here last year, and I was sitting out here watching. I just got back from lunch, feeling comfortably full, on the cusp of uncomfortably full. And I'm trying to get my head back into the session, but I have this secret in my head that's banging around and getting in the way. And the secret is that the chief executive, Mary Henson, the chief executive of the Agile Business Consortium for 22 of its 25 years, the woman who knows everyone, is loved by everyone, who was supportive and welcoming to me when I joined the consortium board, Mary Henson is just about to announce that she's about to retire. And that's going to go from being a secret that the two of us have kept together for 9 months until the time is right, to being this maelstrom of emotion and activity. And for me, what's coming up is anxiety. I have the responsibility of finding the successor. There's fear. I'm going to bollocks it all up. There's sadness that we're going to lose this person who has been at the heart of the organization for 22 years. And then there's excitement. I get to be the person that kind of finds the person who's going to take us forward for the next 22 years or whatever. And so all of this is banging around in my head, and what I need is for the universe to give me something that is going to bring me back to the present. And the universe sends me Jason. And he's sitting here somewhere. Jason, can you put your hand up? Is he here? There he is. So it sends me Jason, and Jason tells us about hiring for agile development teams. He makes this observation, which is at the same time completely obvious and completely profound, which is that while we have changed the context in which we ask people to work, so we say the environment is one of respect and collaboration and autonomy and empowerment, we have done almost nothing to change the way that we hire those people. This is mad. And so what Jason's organization does is they change some of that. And in particular, they bring into the interview room two things that have never been there before. So one is the rest of the team that the person is going to be working with. And the second is those collaborative exercises and games that we use in our retros and our sprint planning to bring some energy to those conversations. And as I'm listening, I realize that this is what we need to do, because if we're serious about business agility, then what's true at the team level has to be true at every level of the organization. If the context has changed in the team, it's changed everywhere. So this is what we need to do. So before I go on, I'm going to spew some vulnerability on the floor, if that's okay. I'm not an expert in this. I'm not an HR professional. If there are HR professionals in the room who want to ask questions later and challenge what I'm going to say, that's fine. Be brave. Agile people love HR professionals. But yeah, I'm not an expert. I have my experiences. I've been a manager for 30 years, so I've hired some people. And I've kind of had this parallel career as chair and director of nonprofits. So I've hired quite a few CEOs for nonprofits, but they're small organizations. So I'm absolutely not an expert. And in fact, this title is a bit of a fraud. I'm not going to tell you how to hire a CEO. I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I'm just going to tell you what we did. Okay? This is just a story. All right? So I'm going to tell you three things. I'm going to tell you why I think that the way we hire is broken. I'm going to tell you what it is I think we can draw on from our agile experience that will help us make it better. And then I'm just going to share the story. Okay, so what did we do? How did it feel? And what did we learn? Okay, so with my imposter syndrome standing proudly on the stage next to me, let's talk about interviews. And specifically, let's talk about competency-based or behavioral or experience-based interviews. Okay? You recognize this stuff, yeah? So can you put your hand up if you've ever been on either side of a competency-based interview? Great. And you can be, no, leave your hands up, leave your hands up. Now, you can be honest here. I don't know what I'm going to get as an answer, but can you leave your hand up if you found that experience to be holistic and satisfying? Okay, good. I'm not the only person in the room. Excellent. So So I was trained in competency-based interviews when I was working for Capgemini back in the 1990s. And I was sold. I was right on board. I'm a gay man. I had been a campaigner for equality and diversity practices back in the days when it was radically subversive. And if this was going to make things more fair, if this was going to undermine institutional unconscious bias and make things better, I was up for it. And then over the next 20 years, what happened was we lost these stupid questions like, if you were a washing powder, what brand would you be? but what it seemed to me we replaced them with was these empty, anodyne questions that just took all of the opportunity for connection out of the interview room. And that was a problem for me. Mr. Laybourne, is he here? Mr. Laybourne, would you tell me about a time when you've demonstrated passion for organizational performance? Now, of course, it's Evan, so Evan would make the answer sing. And that's part of the problem, because part of what we're testing here is actually the candidate's willingness and ability to self-promote. And Evan knows that that's a compliment. We're not really getting under the skin of people. So what is it we do about that? Now, the thing about competency-based interviews, for those who don't know, is they're based on the idea that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, right? That's the idea. But there are problems with this. So what's the Agile critique? Okay, the Agile critique is this. We heard about this yesterday. The whole premise of competency-based interviews is that organizations are like machines. That if you can define the right cogs and procure the right cogs and put them together, everything will be great. But people are not cogs. And the idea of fixed job titles and fixed competencies doesn't make sense in complex adaptive organizations where what we want is for people to cross boundaries and be collaborative and be flexible. I don't want to hire a collection of competencies. I want to hire a person who's going to build complex dynamic relationships with other people. The person I want in my interview room is a complete human being who's going to have relationships. So that's the problem. So what is it we have in our Agile toolbox that we can bring into the interview that will make things different? So two things, I think. The first is, let's make some space for collaboration. So I have a staff team, a board of directors, a bunch of external business partners. We wanted to get them involved in the interview process and the selection process. And then we wanted to make those interview conversations more collaborative themselves. So how can we flatten the dynamic? And then the other thing is how to make it real. So if this is the idea that past behavior is the thing that dictates future behavior, well, how about this then? What about if present behavior is used as the predictor of future behavior? What would it be like to create situations in the interviews where you're doing the real work of the organization, experiencing the real work, doing things that have real import and real consequence, and doing those together with your candidates? What would that be like? Would that open something up? So that's what we tried to do. Okay, so we started with strategy. So like lots of you, we have an away day every, once or twice a year. We get our staff team and our board and our partners, and we put us all together, and we explore something of strategic importance. So we got our shortlist of 5 candidates. We picked a date that was right in the middle of the interview process, and we brought all 5 candidates in for the whole day as full participants in our strategy day. We had 5 tables, put a candidate on each table, rotated them around the room. So by the end of the day, everybody in the organization had an opportunity to work with a potential CEO and find out not what would it be like to work with this person, but what is it like? And the candidates got an opportunity to find out who we really were. What are these people I might work for? How are they dysfunctional? What's going on in that organization? And then at the end of the day, everyone who was there gave us feedback on a survey of what was it like, and at the end of that, we were able to narrow our field of 5 down to a field of 3. Okay, so then what? So then we set a journalist on them. Here's the setup. You've just been appointed chief executive of the consortium. Congratulations, that's great. You're a week into the job. And the BBC, as they do, has been on our website, and they've picked up our white paper on the case for business agility, and they want to interview you. So tomorrow afternoon, 4 o'clock, be ready for a call. And then our real journalist calls them up and does a real interview. And they start with a nice kind of slow-pitch softball question. So I thought Agile was all about computers. What's this business agility thing? And then they kind of work their way up to the more difficult questions like, so when I talk to business leaders, what they tell me is that their biggest problem at the moment is kind of political uncertainty. So how will business agility help me deal with Brexit? That's pretty topical for someone like me from the other side of the pond. So that was kind of real. And then what did we do? OK, so then we ate together. So we invited each candidate to come out for dinner with me and one of the other directors. And we spent 2 hours informally on one question. And here's the question. What's your story? And in particular, what is it in your story that brings you to be sitting right here, right now, applying for this job, for this organization, at this point in your career? And what we got back was not what they've done, but who they are. The young woman who grew up in post-Soviet Russia, trying to build a startup in a political and economic environment that was completely to pieces, and somehow managed to create an international organization. We heard from the young working class guy from Liverpool who put together almost all the money he had on a one-way ticket to Singapore so he could seek his fame and fortune, and got off the plane at Singapore and found out for the first time that you have to have a work permit, and had just enough money to get a further flight to Hong Kong, which at that point was part of Britain, where he could therefore work, and started up a company and all that stuff. So we got these real stories about what motivates people, what are they really made of. And then we had an interview day. And on the interview day, the first thing we did was we gave our staff team half an hour with each of the candidates to not so much to ask them questions, but to tell them about their challenges and their problems and what was going on for them. This is a real picture of the staff team. It's not a picture of the staff team on the interview day, because that would be absurd. So that was fantastic. And then we gave them a persuasive talking task, which was this one. And we gave them this because talking about business agility to a group of people like this is great, because you all get it. You're all friends. But this chief executive needs to talk to business leaders who don't care about, don't know about business agility, and they have to persuade and be credible. So we only gave them an hour's notice that they were going to have to do this. That separates wheat from chaff. And then we did have an interview, but we tried to shake the interview up a little bit. So we did a couple of things. The first thing is, on the left, we got all of the kind of keywords that were part of the kind of job advert, the job description, and so on. We put them on Post-it notes. And then we put the Post-it notes into 2 columns. So the column on the left with the smiley faces, these are the things that we feel that in the process so far we've got to know. We understand where you're at. We kind of get what your competencies are, to use that old language. The things on the question mark column, well, so those are the things that, for one reason or other, we haven't got that yet. We haven't yet worked out what it is you're bringing or what it is you can do there. And what's great about that is that allows us to invite the candidate to own with us, to share with us responsibility for the rest of the 40 minutes, because they know what's coming. They understand what it is we're trying to work out. They can start to make connections. They can understand how they can use the experience and evidence they have to connect these things together. They can see the things that we haven't thought of that they want to bring into the room. So they can start to co-create the interview process with us, and we can flatten the dynamic. And then on the left, we have the sailboat that most of you will know. I like the sailboat in particular for this exercise because it works really well. And the reason is this, that on the left, you've got the island with the palm trees. Well, okay, that's the strategic goal. Well, you've just been involved in this strategy day where you've been working that out, so you've got something to say about that. And then the boat, well, then you've got a nested metaphor with the boat because, okay, the boat's the consortium, that's the organization, but who is the candidate? Are you the captain? Are you the first mate? Are you navigation? Are you the pilot? Are you the cook? What's your metaphor for yourself? How do you make that work? Wind in the sails, well, that allows you to talk about the economic environment. the competitive environment. It lets you talk about the strengths of the organization. Those are all things bringing us forward. And then as the candidate, what's your multiplier? What are you going to do to make those wins stronger? What are you going to do to take what's there and accelerate it? And then the same with the anchors. What do you see around in the environment? What have we not seen? What do you see in us? What might we bring? What are the vulnerabilities we already understand that we can share with you? And how can you help us reel in some of those anchors? And I like to add sharks to my sailboat. I like to have a bit of an understanding of risk. So the fins are the risks that I kind of sense. I got those, and I know that underneath there are these big things ready to chomp on us. So for the candidate, what's your attitude? How does risk feel to you? Is it scratchy? What is it? So that's our interview. So then we do that. Candidates go off. We bring our staff team back into the room, and because we don't want to do a survey at this point, we want to talk to people. So then we talk it through. What's going on for all of us? And we have a messy conversation, and it's much harder than filling in a tick box, a matrix, because you have to have constructive disagreement. But it's a real conversation. So what is it we learned? Well, people are more real when the context we put them in is more real. That's the first thing. The second thing is this is hard. We found it hard, and the candidates found it hard. But I'll share one piece of feedback from one of the unsuccessful candidates. She said that she learned a load about the organization on the day. She learned more about herself. Third thing is that there is time, even over an interview process, there is time and space to build enough trust that people can pull away some of the masks that we all wear when we go into interviews. And the invitation from the organization is to show some of our belly. It's to show some of our vulnerability. Allow the candidates to see inside, pull the curtain back. And most importantly for me, we found out who these people were who were in front of us. We got to know them as individuals, as people, and understand how we might relate to these individuals. All right, so you've heard from me. So let me share with you from a guinea pig. So let me introduce you to my colleague, John.
My name is John Williams, and I'm Chief Exec of the Agile Business Consortium. I was recruited in September 2018 into that position, and being agile, the recruitment process took several stages, not all of which were visible at the outset. At first I thought this is way too complex, and then after the third stage I began to realise this is an iterative, deep dive evaluation for the most pivotal position in the business. And interestingly, the challenging sessions were not the interviews. As a CEO, one should be used to that stuff, really. It was the sessions engaging with the staff that were the most fascinating for me, because I was meeting people who were not only going to be the fulcrum of any future success, they obviously had a very huge hand in whether or not I actually got appointed. That's perfectly in line with the Agile principle of putting people first, and it made good use of the old adage, you can fool the people you work for, you can fool the people you work with, you can't fool the people that work for you. When I recruit a CEO in future, I'll be using an Agile process that's very like the one that I enjoyed when I was recruited as Chief Exec of the Agile Business Consortium.
So that's John Williams, our new Chief Executive. So let me leave you with a question. The question is this. What is it in your world, not in the day-to-day stuff, because your day-to-day stuff, that all looks like the picture on the right, yeah? What is it that's out there on the periphery that you don't pay much attention to because it's just too hard to turn it around? Although when it hits you, it's painful and damaging. What is it that's out there that you could pick up and take apart and inject some agile magic into that would make it more surfboard, would make it better? So our oil tanker was the way we thought about recruitment. What's yours? Thank you.